October 16th, 2023 is going to be the 100th year anniversary of the Walt Disney Company. And of course, a company as prolific as Disney is going to celebrate and cash in with every merchandising option imaginable, from special mouse ears to shirts and apparel, keychains, dog collars, stuffed animals, and of course, special edition Lego sets. I mean, hell, even the predecessor to Mickey Mouse, Oswald the Unlucky Rabbit, is getting in on the action. But if you're a Kamen Rider fan, there's a particular piece of Disney's 100th anniversary special merchandise that you probably know about. The Disney Imagination Belt, or the Disney Driver as it's become known online. Right now, there isn't a ton known about the Imagination Driver, but from what I can tell, it's shaped like the Disney Vault with special keys that can be inserted from the side. It's very reminiscent and gives vibes of the Keyblades from Kingdom Hearts. Right now, all we know are the keys that may be released in the future from their silhouettes. Everything was revealed at this year's Tokyo Toy Show. While there isn't a ton known about the driver and the possible release date, I would be lying if I didn't say it's so unique that I would really love to have it in my collection. And while it's still a pretty cool thing for a Disney fan, it's hard not to immediately recognize that this is 100% an inspiration from a Kamen Rider belt. From its size to the straps that wrap around your waist, and the interchangeable collect them all gimmicks. It's everything you would expect out of a modern day transformation Kamen Rider belt. And if I'm being honest, I think the thing looks really sharp and flashy. And I would love to see this in a show where it's some Disney-inspired Kamen Rider who's like down and out against a Cinderella stepmom monster. And then bam! Magically, through the spirit of belief, the hero gets a fairy godmother key and gives the villain the old bippity boppity boop. And obviously this isn't the first time Disney and Bandai teamed up to make tokusatsu-inspired Disney stuff. I don't think I'll ever stop longing for the Super Sentai-inspired Toy Story combining mecha. This did make me start thinking that while in the US Kamen Rider is not a household name, you can still find its presence in all kinds of places you don't expect it. And while this isn't a comprehensive list, these are a couple of my favorite Kamen Rider appearances and references. And if I miss a Kamen Rider reference that you love, leave a comment and hopefully I'll get to it in a future video. So obviously, we're gonna see more Kamen Rider references in Japanese anime and manga when you compare it to Western media. But that doesn't mean it's not worth pointing out a couple of fun moments. Like in the anime Ahh My Buddha, a harem show that most people watch for the story, and in one episode features a show within a show called Kamen Ranger, featuring Shocker-esque mooks from the original Kamen Rider, and then pans up to see Kamen Ranger Hyper 3, an obvious nod to Kamen Rider V3 combined with Power Rangers. Later in the episode, you get to see a newer series of Kamen Ranger, featuring a transformation sequence that may have well been ripped right out of Kamen Rider Faiz, even making mention that there's a lot of good-looking actors, featuring the Kamen Rider mom fan craze, talking about how all the shows have changed so much over the years since they were kids, sounding like every adult friend I've ever tried to show Sentai or Kamen Rider, and every reference they have is for Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Throughout the episode, it just keeps circling back to Kamen Ranger, riffing on the live mall appearances and even the local heroes, complete with a hero-turned-heel climatic battle, or at least one full of fan service and tentacles. And of course, the harem from the show start their own Sentai team, along with the male lead, transforming them into the Exorcism Rangers. The show it's not great, but it is really stupid fun. So I'm someone who likes anime sometimes. I definitely don't watch everything, and I tend to jump headfirst into a series or two and then go on a long break. And for a long period of time, there's one show everyone told me I should be watching, and that was Bleach. For the longest time, I knew more people who watched a significant amount of Bleach, but no other anime series. So I'm going to find it super interesting when a series that got so big in the West has a character who's just a blatant, shameless Kamen Rider reference, all in the form of Mashiro Kuna. They wear an all-white bodysuit with orange accents and riding gloves, as well as an iconic scarf that's kind of a throwback to Showa-era Kamen Riders, with a pair of goggles on her head that I have to assume are a reference to Kamen Rider's eyes. When she puts her mask on, it almost feels like a henshin. She even has her own version of a rider kick, the signature move of every Kamen Rider, called the Mashiro kick. And this victory pose? is just mwah. And while we're talking about transformation poses, let's not forget about Saber from the Fate series, with a direct copy of Kamen Rider Black's Henshin pose. And you know, I've heard there's a bunch of Kamen Rider references inside of Digimon. But honestly, I don't know anything about Digimon, so I don't even know if I'm allowed to talk about it.
Hey, man!
Oh, hey, it's Karn EX.
Oh, you're still talking about Kamen Rider, huh?
Oh, yeah, I am. I actually just found all these really cool references. In this one scene, they're actually referencing...
Yeah, I don't really care, honestly. But there are some dope Kamen Rider references in a good Toei property. Digimon. The first reference is a bit blink and you'll miss it, but really cool, and that is that in Digimon Cross Wars, or Digimon Fusion for you dub watchers, in episode 1 we can see some posters in Taiki's bedroom that heavily resemble existing tokusatsu heroes. To me, some of them look like Double, Axel, possibly Eternal. Is that Deno in the top right? I don't know. The poster on the left may also be a reference to other tokusatsu shows like Metal Hero, though I can see a bit of a resemblance to Kamen Rider Birth too. And this actually goes a little bit deeper than just a reference to another Toei show, as Digimon Cross Wars writer Riku Sanjo has also worked on several tokusatsu projects, including Kamen Rider Drive, Kamen Rider Double, and the Sentai series Yuden Sentai Kyoryuja. He even worked on the recent Futo PI anime, which I'm sure you've heard about watching High C's channel. Then is a small batch of Digimon that I think are very noteworthy and all come from a similar era. The mere existence of these Digimon, especially around the turn of the century, are Kamen Rider references. Digimon Adventure 02 and Digimon Tamers were airing during the Kamen Rider revival, alongside Kuga and Agito, and this is incredibly clear in the Digimon of that time. Digimon Tamers and beyond gave us Justimon, a clear reference to Kamen Rider, who has 3 different arm changes he can take on, very similar to the forms of various Kamen Rider, and in particular seems to be homaging Rider Man. Justimon even does a Rider kick, but it goes deeper even, as Justimon's X-Antibody form, kind of evolution, sort of, mode change you could say. X-Antibody's kind of an evolution, basically it's a different form that Digimon can take, don't worry about it. Develops a red hue and gives him access to all of Justimon's various arm types, rather than just one at a time, in a form reminiscent of different stages of Kamen Rider Fourze, but in particular Fire States. Justimon's belt even changes to a sort of Kamen Rider belt Digimon virtual pet hybrid when Justimon becomes Justimon X. Then rolling it back slightly, Digimon Adventure 02, Sylphimon very clearly has the Typhoon belt of Kamen Rider Ichigo, but also Ken Ichijoji's partner Stingmon is clearly a reference to Kamen Rider, with the grown-up Ken in the 02 epilogue seen to be a policeman or investigator with Stingmon, and the parallels between Stingmon and Ken Ichijoji and Kamen Rider Kuga and Ichijo are incredibly obvious. Given 02 aired at the same time as Kuga, and is from the same company, as some sexy, hilarious, humble Welshman once put it, there's no way this was a coincidence. And finally, a slightly surprising one even for Digimon fans, is that Kenji Watanabe stated that Omnimon Merciful mode from Digimon Adventure Tri was inspired by various heroes and properties spawned by Shotaro Ishinomori. To quote Mr. Watanabe, "I wanted to bring out a bit of Japaneseness, so I made one armor sword a Japanese sword. At the same time I was conscious of the hero. I've always liked drawing and manga because of the influence of Mr. Shotaro Ishinomori. Of course the heroes are Ishinomori characters, such as Kamen Rider and Cyborg 009. Merciful's wings look like a muffler. When I first came up with the idea, it had angel-like wings, but Koji Ito, the animation director and Digimon animation designer, requested me to make it fluffy with something like cloth. When I heard those words, I thought, oh, that's right, it's a muffler. It's interesting because if the muffler becomes wings, the angel's part will remain. And under the eyes, the so-called tear line is also from Kamen Rider and Kikaider.
That was interesting. Thank you for mansplaining Digiman to me, Karn.
Yeah, whatever. Mail me my appearance check. See you later, houses. Toku is mid.
Well, anyway, Rider references in Japan are to be expected. But the thing I find more interesting is when Kamen Rider finds a way to get references into more Western TV shows. Now, none of these are as blatant as Kamen Ranger, but I think these quick nods and references are super cool. Like most people in their 30s, when I was a kid, I was obsessed with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And now I make videos about tokusatsu. I know, it's shocking. So, it's the small things that warm my heart. Like this scene from the 2012 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles series. In the 4th episode, when Michelangelo is performing his kata, he throws in a quick Kamen Rider V3 transformation pose. I love this. It really feels like two little parts of my world kinda come together.
The secret kata.
Or like in these IDW Transformers comics. You can find references in the background characters to Kamen Rider Den-O or Kamen Rider V3. There's also quick references to Kamen Rider Amazons and Kamen Rider Agito. This isn't really super surprising because the artist of the comics is Matt Frank. He's a well-known tokusatsu fan and the artist for the Godzilla IDW comic line. But the Turtles in comic books, they kind of make more sense to have these references. There's also these small background nods that I think are just really cool to spot. Like in an episode of How I Met Your Mother, where in the background there's figurines of Kamen Rider and V3 just sitting there chilling in the background. It just really makes me wonder, like, what made the set designer grab these and use them as props? Is it just something they chose from their collection? Or did they just get it from a grab bag they have laying around of nerd props? Or this episode of a Disney kids show called Liv and Maddie that ran from 2013 to 2017, from the special episode Voltage of Rooney, which features a superhero origin story with a soundtrack that sounds like something out of Tim Burton's Batman, all part of a fake superhero show called Skyvolt. Liv ends up fighting Joey, who has his very own modified Deca driver. It's small things like this that I am just enthralled by. I just love it. I love thinking about a costume designer who's a fan like me. And they're just like, well, we have this crazy superhero episode. That's it. Time to bust out the Deca driver. Throwing out a small calling card for nerd toku parents that might be watching the show with their kids. Or just watching it. I mean, I watch Japanese kid shows for fun, so no shame. But there's also music, a place that I have found some of the most fun Kamen Rider references. Like Jay Chou's music video for Listen to Mom, featuring Kamen Rider Ryuki right in one of the first shots, hanging out in the background for most of the video alongside Astro Boy and the White Devil, and a kid wearing a plastic Kamen Rider Blade Halloween mask, and rocking a Kamen Rider #1 transformation pose. A video like this gives me a feeling of kinship. And not just that we both like the same type of superhero. It's because we're indulging these silly attachments that we've forever been told we're supposed to leave in childhood. But I find that these tokusatsu superheroes have given me an infinite creativity. It's an attribute that as an adult, I have found incredibly freeing. Now to go back to some music that I knew as a teenager. One of my favorite Tokusatsu in America references is with the Aquabats. The Aquabats Super Show has tons of Tokusatsu-inspired little bits, and it proudly wears love on its sleeve of cheesy special effects. But it's the short 1999 TV pilot demo titled The Aquabats in Color. It is just stuffed full of 1970s and 80s camp and charm, with references to the Adam West Batman and TV serials, and features a ton of Kamen Rider and Tokusatsu references, like the opening shot of all the Aquabats on motorcycles, and their version of a typhoon driver, their version of the Evil Shocker Combat Men, and a big red evil monster, with the addition of stock footage being reused from Godzilla, Bolton from Ultraman, and more, all set to the band's soundtrack of ska-infused pop-punk. I got a bootleg VHS tape of this when I was a teenager, and I loved it. And as an adult, I was pumped to finally hear they got to spin this off as the Aquabats Super Show. Okay, this one is probably the weirdest reference that sticks to me personally, and that is the band Powerman 5000. Powerman 5000, or PM5K for short, is a band that I got really into as an early teenager, but I kind of left it behind until recent years when I've rediscovered them. This may seem like an odd thing to focus so much on, but Powerman 5000 through a tokusatsu lens just makes a lot of sense. The band is led by Spider-One, the vocalist. His real name is Michael Cummings, and the band has had various overall sounds. If you walk through the band's entire discography, there are a lot of really dramatic sound shifts. Thematically, the band has a ton of pulp science fiction overtones. I always thought of PM5K as a modified science fiction band, very similar to the way that his older brother, Robert Cummings, better known as the musician and movie producer Rob Zombie, used a lot of modified horror tropes in White Zombie and Rob Zombie. The band's early albums were kind of a fusion of rock, funk, and hip-hop. It honestly almost sounds like a more prototype version of modern-day nerdcore. And in hindsight, those albums are probably like 20 years too early. Their 1994 album, True Force, features an altered version of Kamen Rider Black. This always kind of blew my mind. Like, I watched Masked Rider as a kid before I got into this, but really had no idea about Kamen Rider as a franchise. And so I always wondered if they were like somehow related to each other. Like, what was the decision process that led us here? Was Spider-1 just a really big Kamen Rider fan? Or was it simply a cool sci-fi image that he just slapped on an album cover? A year later in 1995, they put out the album The Blood Splat Rating System. This also featured Kamen Rider on the cover. So you have to think that this wasn't a fluke. There's a reason they put Kamen Rider on both covers. And it makes me wonder, was that planned to be continued? But these albums were independent releases, and they later signed with DreamWorks Records. And they re-released the Blood Splat Rating System as Mega Kung Fu Radio. And if I know Toei, as the band got bigger, there's no way they were going to allow them to use Kamen Rider on the record. You know, without paying handsomely. Powerman 5000 later had a runaway success with their 1999 album Tonight the Stars Revolt, which featured science fiction overtones about campy topics like space travel, annihilation from the stars, and informing everyone what it's like when worlds collide. It also had a lot of more serious undertones like anti-consumerism and alienation and isolation and classism, bringing up some of the deeper thoughts you get from a good piece of science fiction or tokusatsu or something like Kamen Rider 01. Unfortunately, Kamen Rider did not make his way in any of the album art, but they still use plenty of tokusatsu references. I mean, you take one look at the music video for When Worlds Collide, and I mean, you tell me this guy isn't straight up a tokusatsu villain, or just all the VFX that have been implemented, or the costumes, or the so 90s alternative rock hairstyles. The music video had so much character to it that when I saw it at like 2 a.m. as a teenager, I became obsessed, leading me deeper into my love of science fiction and eventually tokusatsu. The single that followed When Worlds Collide was Nobody's Real. It features a kid who picks up a futuristic robot helmet and sees alienation and the disingenuous nature of people around him. And by some weird turn of luck, I actually have a friend who owns the helmet from this video. Unfortunately, it was resting on a shelf, and because music is life, he pumped up the jams too high and it flew off a shelf and took some damage. But he's super awesome and let me come over and film what was left of the helmet. So, thanks Dave. Powerman 5000 is still an active band today, releasing their last album, The Noble Rot, in 2020. Spider-1 is now directing horror movies. As of this recording, he's released Allegoria, Bury the Bride, and later this year, Little Bits. So yeah, if you haven't, go check it out. It's been a really fun band to rediscover. And to wrap all this music and this video up, I want to talk about my favorite Kamen Rider music reference. And that's an Easter egg from our boy KK Slider from Animal Crossing, performing Go KK Rider. It's a song in the style of the original Kamen Rider theme. It also has this amazing artwork of KK Slider on a rider machine, and I think I want this as a poster on my wall. That's all for this video, and I am sure I'm missing a ton of other Kamen Rider references and media. If there is something you would like to see covered in a future video, please leave a comment. Until next time, I'm Hi-C, and I hope you keep watching.